Welcome to What If Deku Was a Immortal Villain. Warning: cute gay stuff. Enjoy. Eyes Yukuspov. Before he meets All Might. As I stood over the railing, I got a clear view of the polluted sky being loaded up with smog and busy roads full of screeching cars with angry people. All around me were signs of the pathetic human race. A violent breeze smashed against my eyes, causing them to twitch and fill with tears, obscuring my view of the world around me. Stop! I hear an old and desperate voice yell from behind. I rotate my body so that I am facing the building and look towards an old man limping towards me. Stop! He yells again, noticing his words reached me. Don't jump there, you'll hit my car. Can you guess what I do? Well, I reel up my middle finger at this bastard and lean backwards with a smug look on my face. Then I fall gracefully, but not too graceful, past the second story quickly, oh too quick, and hit the car violently, far too violent. I stare up at the sky, allowing the moments to pass until I feel a heavy river of blood pouring out of my broken body. It hurts. To fix the issue, I pop my limbs back in place and watch as they slowly begin fixing themselves, halting the flow of blood. It hurts. I pull out a notebook that I placed between the band of my black joggers, which are now covered in multiple holes and fresh blood. I open my notebook while taking the pen dangling at the side and write, Attempt 136, Suicide Jump Pain Rating, 4 Success, NA. I felt a sense of relief when falling, however my back felt like it was torn off when I hit the car. Note to self: if I do this again, go for a higher building where I can enjoy the view, or go for a remote cliff. I peel my back off of the car, removing the broken shards of glass for my body while doing so. It really hurts. I stand on my feet and temporarily support myself using the car until I regain full control of my agitated limbs. I then walk off as if nothing had happened, glancing behind me as I saw the selfish old man crying beside his car. I thought, that's what you get for not giving a shit. I then make my way home while dreading what's in store for me. The Madara's household, and here we go again, me walking through the door, me taking my shoes off, me greeting my parents, and then I suddenly get cut off by my mum's loud screeching, "Get out of this house already, you fucking bastard." I then do what most would and attempt to sneak off to my room, but what do you know, my dumbass of a father heard me and demands I come over to him. Eyes Yuku. Get your ass over here. Well, here I am, stood in front of my father as he yells and complains while my mom cowers in a corner. Literally the story of my life. At this point I really pitied the poor neighbors. I mean, we were in a 3-story apartment block with neighbors all around us listening in, so their ears must be listen when your dad is speaking to you. He slapped me across the face with all his strength, causing me to be flung across the room and slam into the shelves. It hurts. I stumble to the floor when I attempt to get up due to the fuzziness in my head. If he's ever wondered why I'm a mumbling mess, then it's his fault. My father walked up to me and noticed my attempt to get up, so he pinned me to the floor, one of his legs crushing my body while his arms crush my delicate wrists. It hurts. When I finally stop resisting, he reaches for my delicate green curls and steadily stands himself up, dragging me along with him. Due to my twig-like physique and my body type reflecting my strength, I could not resist the strength of the blob-built man who could be described as being similar to a sumo wrestler. I swung my legs around and punched his hand like a flailing child, yet any attempt of mine was fruitless. He pulled my head up by my hair, causing my roots to cry out in pain as I let out a minor groan, yet he had still done worse to me. Please just stop. He pulled my head back and then violently bashed it against the solid wall. Through this I remained quiet as I gritted my teeth and swallowed my anger. Help. He then pulled my head back again. Apologize. My father demanded. My mother runs at him desperately as she demands that he release her son, but he slaps her round the face and she collapses to the floor as a sobbing mess. My father bashes my head against the wall, but yet again I remain quiet. Make it stop hurting. He repeats this 3 more times until blood begins to flow down my face. I'm sorry, I stutter in a monotone voice. He slams my head against the wall again, complaining about how he can't hear me. I'm sorry. I say again, slightly louder but still monotone. It hurts. Speak with more emotion, you worthless bastard. He slams my head again. This time the fresh blood seeps into my open eyes, filling the whites of my eyes and temporarily dyeing them red. I'm sorry. I yell back at him before he slams my head again. Why? Just make it stop. This continues on for at least 7 more times until he becomes bored and releases me and sits on his recliner chair, turning on the TV. At this moment I tumble onto the floor and take a breath of relief before he demands, go get me some beer. Please stop. I quickly steady myself to stand up and run towards the door. I know all too well that if I take too long he'll start beating Mum, so I only grab a few wipes, an extra long blue hoodie, some money and my shoes. I stumble out of the door as I try to put my shoes on while walking and shut the door behind me, still in my torn-up bloody joggers and with my red eyes. Along the way to the shop, that I found sells to underage customers, I wipe my forehead clear of the flowing blood, and due to my quirk my head has already stopped releasing more blood, though it takes a while to heal completely. An injury of this caliber would take around 7 hours. I, of course, do not even try to wipe the blood from my eyes due to obvious reasons and decide to wash it off when I get home. I buy the beer from the sketchy shop and take my usual peaceful shortcut across the local park, until I see the silhouette of a strange hooded man staring up at the sky on a bench in the park center. Due to my own boredom and curiosity I walk up to the man and sit beside him and ask, "What are you doing?" I stare up at the sky as well, though I of course cannot see a single star because of my blood-soaked vision. "I have no reason to tell you," the guy responded in a rude, cacophonous, raspy tone. "Then why are you here?" I asked. He took a deep sigh and said, "'Cause I can be kid. Now how about you go bother your mummy and daddy at home?" I always hated it when people called me a kid. I mean, I was old enough to understand that life sucks, I was old enough to know that my existence was pointless, and I was old enough to have experienced death over and over, 136 times to be exact, so I responded in the best way I could think of. I took a deep breath and said, "Bold of you to assume I have parents." I mean, I did and I do, but still, what if I hadn't? We sat in silence for what felt like forever until I broke the invisible sound barrier. "Well, I do, but my father is dead to me and my mum tries but just can't." It was silent again for a while until he told me, "Well, that's nice, kid," in a slightly sarcastic tone. "I'm not a kid, yeah, no. I've experienced plenty of this miserable thing called life and have a clear understanding of how pointless it." He sighs and tells me, "Well done." He didn't say it sarcastically, but he didn't say it earnestly either. At the very least he didn't call me a kid, so I'll class that as a win in my book. I look over to him trying to catch a glimpse of his face, but I could only see a silhouette in this red-colored world of mine. Ending it with that failure, I stand up, tell the man "see ya," and walk off towards my hell home. What a weird guy, I thought, but at least he distracted me from my depressing life for a second there. A slight smirk spreads across my face, but I quickly dismiss it and continue on home. Please save me. Shigadeku's paw. Well, that was weird. I had just spoken to a kid about life, I think? And that was just weird. I mean, this young kid, maybe 15, just approached me and was like, "Hey, I hate life, how about you?" Like, who the hell would come up to a total stranger and talk about how shitty life is? Well, clearly that kid would. But still, I thought he did somewhat help me clear my thoughts though. I slightly smirk but quickly wiped that look off of my face and got my phone out. Crusty Blueberry, "Hey Kiragi, pick me up transport. I am currently talking with Master right now and will be unable to help you, so you will have to walk back. See you later." Crusty Blueberry, "When I get back you will never be able to see again." I put my phone back in my pocket and stared up at the sky, feeling an intense annoyance. "You know what, Kiragi, I thought just fuck you." I eventually let go of my stubbornness and got off the bench and trudged off to the bar. "Wait. Which way do I go?" And that was the time I met the strange boy and got lost. Eyes Yukuspov, the next day. Ah, what a beautiful day it was to be alive. I stumbled out of bedding, tripping in the middle of it. I ripped open my curtain and stared directly into a lovely brick wall view that stood 2 rulers away from my window. I only had damaged school uniforms left that were destroyed by Kaken's constant torment. I went to get breakfast but was hit across the face and told to starve. I was thrown out of my house and I saw Kaken the moment I got into school. Truly an amazing day it was. Please let me die. Kaken demanded that I follow him and his dumbass goonies to the side of school, and me, who hates being burned, obviously complied. Stop. So at that point I walked to the side of the school and stood there as Kaken yelled in my face, and I just stared at the floor, but obviously every action I take is wrong, so I still got bombed by this nukes for brains idiot, who was actually surprisingly smart somehow. Deku, you bastard, why did you even bother showing your dumb quirkless face? He then wraps his disgusting sweaty hand around my neck and uses his upper body strength to slam me against the wall. I avoid eye contact and continue to look at the ground as I lightly choke from being strangled. Help me. Since I was avoiding his gaze, he warned me by creating an explosion in his hand which burnt my neck and forced me into a coughing fit, which made him release my neck and I suddenly collapsed onto the floor gasping for air. It hurts. Disgusting Deku. He yelled as he kicked me directly in the stomach hard enough make me cough up blood. It hurts. His pointless groupies laughed as I squirmed around on the floor trying my best not to die. When rating my attempt at suicide, suffocation was within my top 10 most painful methods, number 1 being getting hit on the head over and over with a teaspoon, because man that hurt. Knowing that air is so close yet couldn't reach my lungs was the most painful thing about suffocating. Please let me die. Kaken prepares to kick me again until he comes to a halt as the school bell rings. You were saved by the bell, Deku. He yells and turns around heading off to class. If I compared being at home to being at school, it was like comparing having my skull bashed in or being nuked, so I never really thought about which was worse, but one thing kept me from hating Kaken. It was his walk. Whenever I saw his small-time thuggish walk, it always made me laugh. I let out a slight chuckle which I soon regretted since my breathing was still uneven. Well, the rest of the day went on the same as usual mostly. I wrapped bandages around my neck to hide any trace of my quirk. I got to the class half an hour late. The class collectively bullied me. I was called useless. I was abused by Kaken. He blew up my notebook full of my suicide notes. He told me to take a swan dive off the roof, and my suicide notes became fish food. I really do wish I had jumped out the window at that moment, but had I done that and it would have revealed my quirk. I then make my way home and, what do you know, I started being suffocated by a damp pile of shit as it began to shove its gooey self down my poor dear abused throat. It hurts. While this happens, I hear some guy yell something and then my vision becomes slurred and I black out. Well, more specifically, I died. Now let it be over. I eventually regain consciousness to find some tall, highly detailed guy slapping me across the face. It was lightly, but still it was just plain rude. Like, does this guy naturally hit dead people or what? I sit myself up against the wall and slowly begin to gain back my clear sight and focused mind. I look at the guy's face and noticed the fact that he was a hero. All something. All fight? No. All right? Definitely not, but I am certain that it's all something. At that moment I was not sure who the hero was and assumed he was some small-time hero. Well, I'm off, young sir. He loaded the shit villian into 2 separate 2.5-liter bottles and shot off into the sky. My main thought from this experience was, what sort of hero leaves a civilian who almost suffocated and expects them to walk all the way home? Number 1 hero, am I right, people? I snickered to myself as I focused on standing on my own 2 feet. I take 2 steps using the wall but lean forward. I felt a strong urge to throw up. I regurgitated the remaining slime that took refuge in my system and it splattered on the ground. At that moment I did what many dog owners usually do. I grabbed a couple leaves and covered the evidence and stepped on it to ensure it was dead. Afterwards I wiped my shoe on the grass to check and make sure none of the slime got stuck onto my shoe. I then grabbed my notebook that was knocked out of my grasp when the slime attacked me and checked the pages are not damaged. I come across a double-page spread that had a giant signature it. All Might, huh? I thought, what a waste of pages. I dismissed the signature and made my way off to my miserable household. Don't go back. Izuku's 2 months after Meet All Might. Well, life was still the exact same for me, apart from the fact that I started taking secret self-defense classes and started bodybuilding to improve my strength. I think I had at least leveled up from a twig to a log, which is saying something, although of course my father was at the level of a sumo wrestler and Kakin at the level of a nuke, both of which could easily destroy my weak tree body, but it was still an improvement. I was still dying on the daily, but I at least hadn't been attacked by a villian since then. Over and over and over and over. I also found out that the all guy was actually a big shot, which truly made me feel like this country was doomed. That's actually what inspired me to practice self-defense so that I could defend myself. I don't care. I had also trained myself at home on how to use a blade. I mainly practiced with my box cutter but managed to save up enough money to buy a proper blade, which I hid from my father carefully under a floorboard that sat beneath my bed. Use it to end it all. I was still being abused and tormented and still running useless errands, which was seriously boring, but at this point I stopped giving two shits. Shigaraki's pav, I'm bored. I said to myself as I lay in bed with my head dangling off of the edge, my body spread out like a starfish. I just stared at a spot beneath my cupboard from an upside-down perspective, and man, it was boring. Shigaraki, I heard Kurogiri say as he entered my room. I took a long and deep sigh and said, I'm bored. He just stared at me for a while before completely ignoring my comment and saying what he was going to say when he entered my room. The master has offered to give us a powerful Namu once it is complete, one that shall be strong enough to kill All Might. He ended his sentence and I only responded to him with a slight glance in his general direction. I just sit there until an idea appears in my mind and command Kurogiri to open up a portal. Hey Kurogiri, open a portal for me, will ya? He sighs and opens a smoky purpley black portal, at which I then climb through and arrive on the other side. Someone's gonna die tonight, I think, as I smile at my brilliant idea of a pastime. I start walking randomly, looking out for victims of my boredom, yet for the longest time I couldn't find anyone. Eventually I found myself at a familiar park, which was once again completely deserted. I sat on a familiar bench and started up at the familiar sky, though this time it was more beautiful than before. This time the sky was a swirling mix of pinks, purples, and blues plastered with small shining dots that shone brighter than before. To my slight right there was a glorious, large, crescent baby blue moon that lit up the sky. I sat there for a while staring at the moon until I hear some familiar words in a familiar tone. What are you doing? That same kid sat down on the bench next to me and asked the same question that he did last time. Staring at the sky. I responded in my raspy voice. And why are you here? He asked once more while staring at the baby blue moon. I'm bored. I responded truthfully. We stare up at the moon for a bit longer until he says, isn't the color of moon just wondering? He said it in a slightly sad and empathetic tone. A perfect mix of sorrow and beauty. I glanced in his direction and saw very slight tears in his eyes. At that point I decided that, to release my boredom, this kid would be my first victim. Clearly his life sucks, so in truth I'd be doing him a favor. I grab a hold of his arm and place down all 5 of my fingers. At that moment his coat disintegrates along with some bandages that lay beneath it. Once they were out of the way I hurriedly tightened my grip on his arm and waited for him to turn to dust. Well, why is this kid still standing? I thought, as my quirk affected him in no way. I'll let go. He said, you're hurting my arm. There was very little desperation in his voice, likely because he had been in similar situations time and time again. He struggled for a while until he finally stops as I just sat there and stared at my hand on his wrist. There was not a single crack on his skin. I weakened my grip and he ran off, leaving behind a plastic bag containing a 6-pack of beer. Was that kid blushing? I noticed that as he ran away his face ran red. I wonder why? Out of my own personal curiosity I left a small piece of paper in his plastic bag in case he came back for it and left the park in search of a new victim to test out if my quirk had become faulty. I then find a passed out drunken man sat in some alleyway near some random pub and grab his arm. Within 3 seconds he turns to a pile of ash. So it's not my quirk that's faulty then, it's that kid. I desired to know why my quirk did not work on him, however I currently had no way of knowing, so I walked back to the bar with a sense of incompletion from being unable to kill the kid. So I went on one of my usual beer runs for my dad and passed through the park, and wouldn't you know it, I saw that same guy from before. I sat next to him again and asked the exact same questions. This time he answered more truthfully, so I'ma go ahead and class that as a win. I would say it was the first time in my life that someone had a potentially normal conversation with me, and that made me feel a sense of joy, though that was of course short-lived when, what do you know, he grabs my wrist and destroys my jumper. One of the only 3 that didn't have holes in them, so say a na-ura to that. Please save me. After he destroys my jumper and bandages, he just stares at his hand on my arm and it sent shivers down my spine. I had just noticed, but his eyes were really pretty, I thought. They were a deep bloodshot red that illuminated in the moonlight. Due to my poor vision in the night I could not make out any of his other features, all I could feel was his rough grasp and see his red eyes. Eventually he relaxed his hand and I became able to run. After I had got to the edge of the park I gasped for air and steadied my breathing before realizing I had left the beer, and my dad, being the dick that he is, wouldn't let me get away with that, so I obviously had to go back, potentially with my life on the line. As I walked back towards the bench I felt myself getting flustered and excited. Why do I feel like this? I wondered. Save me. After around 3 minutes I made my way back to the bench to find the bench empty other than my plastic bag full of beer. I'm gonna be honest and say that my heart honestly sank in that moment, but there was obviously nothing I could do about it, so I grabbed the bag and made my way home. All I could do was keep the memory of his beautiful blood-red eyes in my mind. From that day I made a note in my head and decided to buy some hand cream which I would carry around with me everywhere in case I ever met him again. Save me, Tenko. Izukuspov. 2 months later, life is the same barring endless cycle, and here I am repeating similar past events. I'm surrounded by what seems like 5 pro heroes, if I count the tall lady attempting to hide behind a few buildings. Here I'm being watched by a crowd of around 20 people, and here I am with a news camera pointing at me. They're all staring at me as I chill in the hand of a bulldozer-looking villian acting like damn King Kong on the top of a building. I was just minding my business about to jump off the building and this guy comes along and ruins it. I mean, seriously bro, piss off and let me die. Go away. So yeah, here I am being held as a hostage as the heroes think up a plan to save me. Of course if they approach the villain he'll yeet me off the building. I mean, I don't give a shit, but they don't know that I can't die, so yeah. Due to my own annoyance in this situation I give up on waiting and knock the blade in the sole of my shoe out and catch it in my hand. I then create a deep cut in the big guy's hand. I honestly didn't expect him to act like a child, but he did and dropped me on the edge of the building. I then leaned backwards facing the villain and stuck my middle finger up. Man, I love that rush that comes from jumping off a building in spite of another person, and the breeze while falling is so refreshing. The heroes quickly act. The water hero creates a large blob of water which I slam against as I reach the floor. This wood hero reacts to the villain no longer having a hostage and begins to create a tree prison for them, but then the large lady drop kicks the villain while causing a mass amount of damage to the building. I break out in hysterical laughter from the adrenaline pumping through my veins at that moment. Man, what a rush. I enjoy every second of the experience. Soon after, the villain is restrained and taken into police custody, and I get taken to an ambulance where I was given a fully body check to look for injuries. The heroes approached me and some of them choked me out for being too careless while others praised me for my bravery. I get my notebook out to make notes about my jumping experience, and when doing so they offer to sign my notebook, so at that point I had like 6 hero signatures in my notebook, including that all guy. In all honesty, I felt like these were better examples of heroes than the all guy, cause I mean at least they made an effort to check on how I was doing. They should have let me fall. When my body was being checked by the doctors, they noticed my bloody bandages but saw no injuries beneath them. Due to this, they took some of the bandages with them and took a sample of my blood in order to test them. If it was somebody else's blood, they would likely blacklist me and watch my actions, and if it was my blood, then they'd likely watch over me to reassure that my home and school life is alright. Since all of the blood is most definitely mine, I'd have quite the surprise in store for them. After that experience, I made my way back to my abusive home, being given a lift from the police. We arrive at my home and they insist they talk to my parents in order to reduce their worries and tell them what their child went through. We got to the door outside of the apartment and knocked and heard an amusing yell, "Are you back already, you fucking brat?" My ears are ringing. This obviously alarmed the police, though I was used to it and just let out a little snicker in response. "I hate him." The fat ass slammed open the door but rapidly hid his anger as he saw the police. He instantly assumed I had done something wrong and his anger started to show once again. "What did my son do?" he asked, trying to suppress his rage through gritted teeth as much possibly. "Apologies for the sudden visit, sir," said one of the officers, disguising their suspicions. "We came to inform you that your son was involved in a recent villian incident and wished to inform you he is well." My deadbeat father gritted his teeth tighter as he said, "Well, couldn't my son have said that himself?" He grabbed my head and pushed me into the house, knocking me to the floor, where I basically just said screw it and sat there. He began to shut the door until one of the officers put their foot in the way. "Sir, before you go, I want to talk to you about a few things and ask your son why he was on the roof." My father opens the door back up and gives the officer an awkward, frustrated smile as he received a satisfied smile back. Since he basically had no choice, he reopened the door and allowed the officer to talk. "Firstly, I would like to discuss as to why your son was wearing blood-soaked bandages almost head to toe." My father gave me an aggressive glance before he answered the question. "I don't know, I didn't realize that." "Son, I hope you aren't harming yourself. I'll have to check your room later." The female officer looked at him suspiciously and then checked my expression, only to see it blank and emotionless. "Don't leave me here. Next, I'd like to know if you have any knowledge of anything he is suffering from, since witness reports state he jumped off of the building without even hesitating, almost as if he expected to die." My father shot a more intense glare at me that felt like a pea shooter firing at my forehead. "No, he is a perfectly healthy teenage boy." "That's a lie. He, or anybody else for that matter, had no clue that I was suffering from an extreme case of depression that made me attempt to kill myself every day of my miserable existence. I seem both emotionally and physically numb, but it hurts. It constantly hurts, and all I do is hurt. It hurts." "Okay, last question for your son." She turned to face me. "Why were you on that building, son?" She asked it in a calm, soothing voice so as to not alarm me. I wanted to catch a nice view of the miserable city full of miserable people. A half-truth said in a monotone voice that made the woman give me a worried look that just screamed, "You need counseling," which I honestly did, but if done by any normal person it would make me worse. Death is the best cure. She and the other officers said their goodbyes and made their way back to their car. My father slammed the door and I tried to crawl away back into my room, not having time to spare by standing up, but he quickly grabs onto my ankle and drags me to the living room. "Let go." I see my mum sat in a corner facing the wall. It was likely that she stayed there through the entire visit so as to not be hit. I kick my legs about and scream like a desperate child. It hurts. I flail my arms about trying to get him to release me. It hurts. When my legs are within reach, I attempt to reach for the blade that I placed back into the sole of my shoe but was too late. It hurts. He grabs a hammer from one of the drawers and tries to slam it on my head. I struggle more intensely because I knew that even if my heart stopped he'd keep hitting me. Every time I would revive I'm certain he would torment me. It hurts. I'm sick of this. Izuku's paw, blood splattered everywhere. It covered the walls, it covered the floor, it covered me and it covered my mum. 2 minutes earlier I swung my arms more intensely, trying as best I could to reach for the blade, but it was no good. I was done for. I feel so numb. My father swung down the hammer, only just missing my head as I wriggled like a worm. Sit still, you unwanted bastard. He kept trying to hit me and I kept dodging. This went on for at least a minute until I finally reached my knife. I lunged towards my father, trying to plunge the knife into his chest, yet I miss. No, stop. He screams at the top of his lunges, steps on my arm containing the knife, breaking the bones in my arms, and swings the hammer my way. This time I had no time to dodge and he lands a clear hit on my skull, making it crack and causing my head to bleed furiously. Help me. I scream intensely at this new undiscovered pain and a fountain of tears pour out of my eyes. Help me. A figure appears behind my father and all of a sudden I see blood pour out of his back. He turns around and we both see my mum stood there with a large bloody butcher's knife in her hands. Tears stream down her face as she screams, "Don't touch my son." She plunges the knife down into my father's back once more, giving him no time to react. "You bitch." He screams back at my mum as he loses mobility due to the loss of blood and collapses to the floor like a beached whale. I try my best to watch this to the end but become unable to remain conscious. "Mum. Thank you." Female officer's puff. We'll call her Mary. As we get back into the car and start to drive to the station, we suddenly get a call on the radio. 1,2.1,2. Do you copy? I, being in the passenger's seat, respond to the call. Group 3 copies. I focus on the sound of the radio for a response. Return back to apartment block 3 in District 2. We have a report of domestic violence coming from apartment 324 from multiple different people. I then remember that house is the one we took the boy to and urgently usher us back to the apartment. Group 3 is heading back to the location, but more officers may be required. We then make our way back to the apartment and rush out the vehicle. We dash over to the door and knock on, checking for a response. From inside we heard a small cry and attempt to open the door, finding that it was unlocked. When we get to the scene, I can imagine what happened, but it was still truly a gruesome sight to behold. We see the likely abusive husband's corpse lying in the center of the room with multiple stab wounds to the back and a gash along his neck. Besides him sat a large butcher's knife absolutely soaked in the man's blood. Curled up in the corner we see the blood-soaked mother sat there in fear, holding her son, Izuku Midoriya, in her arms. He is unconscious. When backup arrives we take the mother into custody, though she shows no resistance at all and complied willingly. It takes a 4-man team to lift the body of the man, but they manage to put him on a stretcher and cover him with a body bag. The boy is put on a stretcher and taken into an ambulance where he will be treated at a hospital for his head wound and broken arm. Afterwards the boy will receive some counseling and put into the foster system. His mother will be taken to prison and will most definitely receive a sentence, since she clearly stated what had occurred, unless evidence states otherwise. Izuku's paw. My head hurts. I suddenly sat up and opened my eyes, revealing I was in an ambulance. The man besides me demanded that I lie back down and complains about my injuries, though I honestly just zoned out as I tried to wrap my head around the events of what just occurred. I sat my head back against the stretcher and focused more intensely. Oh wait, I thought he's dead now. I break out in hysterical laughter and the man besides me attempts to hold me down, assuming I was going into a fit of some sort. Ha 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 ha. Can you believe it? That motherfucker's actually dead now. I yelled at. I thought he was some sort of fucking immortal cockroach. The person beside me pinned me down and strapped me to the stretcher, thinking I was going into shock. When we finally arrived at the hospital and I had finally calmed down, the doctors removed the blood-soaked bandages from my head only to see that the wound had almost fully healed. They began to talk to each other about what it was until I confessed. "It's my quirk." When I spoke up they all stared at me in a confused state before they ran off somewhere, leaving me to just sit there. Eventually they come rushing back with some old woman telling me about how she also has a healing quirk. The woman ushers all the other doctors away and sits with me wanting to discuss my quirk. "Sorry to ask this of you, Sonny, but do you know the limits of your quirk?" She said it in a kind and warming voice. "It takes a while to heal and it won't let me die," I say in a slightly hysterical and psychotic tone, still affected by the joy of my father's death. "What do you mean it won't let you die?" She asks another annoying yet kind question. "I mean what I say, it's an immortality quirk that won't let me die. Even if I chop off a limb it grows back within a day. I'm like a fucking cockroach." I stare at the floor as I say this. Joy filled my head because my father was dead but my heart was still empty. "Why?" "Okay, please wait here, Sonny." The old woman walks out and goes to talk to the doctors outside. They eventually walk away so that I have room to think to myself. Why do I feel so empty? I whisper to myself. Because I'm lonely. Then how can I remove this feeling? I need to find someone. Who? The one I have been waiting for. Where can I find them? I'll know when I meet them. I'll feel fulfilled in the place I currently feel emptiest. The old lady returns with a few other people a day later. They check that my head is completely healed and guide me out of the hospital and take me to some building which stood in a remote area surrounded by trees. "You'll be staying here for around a month until we find you a place to stay, and don't worry, we took everything out of your room minus the furniture, of course," the old lady said. "I don't want to be here." When we entered the building, a strange man told me to follow him into an empty room containing 2 leather chairs and a small coffee table. I sit on one of the chairs and look around me, seeing 3 grey painted walls and a mirror on the last wall, likely a one-way mirror. After a while the same man from before enters the room and asks, "Would you like a drink?" in a deep and husky voice. I ask for a tea with 3 sugar and he leaves the room. Eventually he came back in holding 2 mugs and a plate of biscuits and placed them on the coffee table that stood between the chairs. He sat down on the chair opposite me and spoke calmly so as to not provoke me in any way, assuming I was in an unstable state, which I guess I was. "Now then, Izuku Midoriya, could you please tell me about yourself so that we can make an effort to help you?" I award him for his efforts and straightforward mannerisms, but whatever they intended to try, it would not work. A smirk crossed over my face as I began to inform him about myself. "Don't tell him anything. My name is Izuku Midoriya, aged 15, born March 22nd. My dad abused me daily from age 4 and my mom tried to help me but just couldn't. I suffer from depression, anxiety and a tendency to kill myself. If you check in my notebook you'll find that it is full of suicide notes and you will see that I have died exactly 203 times. I am collectively bullied at school and abused by a specific student, and I felt really happy when my dad died but felt sad that I wasn't the one who killed him. Oh. I almost forgot that I have a voice in my head that I hear from time to time, but it's relatively new." The man finished making his notes and then looked up at me. "I'm sorry if this is a difficult subject, but could you tell me more about your quirk? Out of all that I would personally call that one the least difficult. He doesn't care about me. It developed at around age 7 when my dad first killed me, and ever since I had tried to die but simply couldn't. That's all there really is to say about it." He quickly noted down my words and looked disappointed by how little I had to say. "Oh, one more thing," he said as I was just about to take a sip of my tea. "Could you possibly tell me about that voice you hear?" "No. Sure thing," I said with a large devilish smile on my face. "It's been going on for the past couple of months, but until recently I could hardly hear it and forgot everything it used to say. I actually had a conversation with it yesterday." He looked at me with a worried expression before he asks, "And what did you talk about?" I focused on my memory of the conversation and tell him the key parts I can remember. It said there was a way to fill the emptiness in my heart by finding a certain person and that I will know it was them when I meet the person. Oh, he said curiously. And what does your heart desire? To die. I responded, so I think that the certain person may be the only one able to kill me. And who do you think it is? He kept coming question after question and it was getting seriously annoying, so I hurriedly responded in the hopes that he would leave me alone after this and let me drink my tea. Stop. Well, there was this one guy I met at some park who, when I approached him, made my heart feel all weird and increased my heart rate. And who was this man? He asked desperately, hoping for the man's name, at which I did not know. Tenko. I'm not sure who he is. The voice may know, but I can't hear it right now. The man finished his notes and stood up. He thanked me for my time and exited through the heavy, white, metal door. He leaves me alone and finally allows me to drink my tea and think to myself. 1 month later, throughout the month I have had to go through intense therapy and counseling because of their attempt to make me into a healthy teenager, although I honestly haven't changed and am still the same, probably even worse since I was still full of joy from my father's death. Within this month they believe I have improved, so I am now allowed to freely go outside again. For some unknown reason they decided to personally put me through self-defense classes and still allow me to improve my strength. They have analyzed my notebook and have surprisingly given it back to me. Also, somehow, they have not found the multiple blades hidden within my clothing and giant teddy bear, which I own specifically with the goal of hiding my knives within it. At first this place felt like a prison but has become more like a free range, me being the chicken that could be easily sent to slaughter at any moment. They take blood samples from me almost daily and have made no effort to tell me why. They had first taken away all my device but gave them back a week ago. I still have no knowledge of what they are planning to do with me, but they have informed me that my mum has been sent to prison with a life sentence, but when I leave this place I will be allowed to visit her monthly. My heart still feels like a black hole and I haven't been able to keep up my suicide streak since they're watching me like a hawk. The main method still available to me is drowning when I have a bath, but that's ranked 6 on my worst methods of dying, so I'd rather not too much. I'm bored. It's been a strange experience in this place and all I've really been able to do is train and read manga. Well, they did also set up private lessons for me, but they decided for me that I'd still be doing my entrance exam, and I'm pretty sure they're also choosing the high school I go to. They'll probably choose one where they can watch over me. Lately I've been thinking about the man at the park a lot, when creating drawings, because they claim that it calms the mind. I often find myself drawing a hooded figure with beady red eyes. At this point I've drawn around 15 drawings of him and it's destroying my mind. I think I'm obsessed. I am. Shigaraki's pav. I'm bored. I said to myself while grabbing a drink from the bar to drown out my boredom. I remembered that Sensei said the Namu would be finished soon, but how would we find that annoying All Might? I took a swig at the shot glass and gulped it all down. After doing so I felt a slight burning sensation in my throat. Kuragiri, I said as I leaned my head against the bar counter. I'm bored, what should do? I turned my head to face him as I watched him clean the glasses over and over for literally no reason. Just wait some more, then we can go destroy All Might. His words really do start to become repetitive, not to mention that he's no help at all. I then remembered that unkillable kid. The thought of him made my hands twitch and my mind become overwhelmed with murderous intent. I then commanded Kuragiri to make a portal to the park. In response he takes a deep sigh and says, one of these days you'll be caught by a hero because of your killing sprees. He opens a swirling portal which I then slowly climb through. Once on the other side I see the dark park almost pitch black due to the dark clouds covering the illuminated moon. And then repeating all the same actions for the third time I sit on the bench, I stare at the sky for a bit and close my eyes. When I opened my eyes again I saw 2 bright green orbs staring down at me, complemented by a large devilish smirk. It was the kid. I finally got out of that boring building. I checked my phone beforehand to find out that it was a 45-minute walk back to the area I lived in. I made my way back to where my suffering began, using the map on my phone to guide me, leaving the building at 5:30 p.m. Although I had some resistance from the people watching over me, they eventually conceded. I soon made it to my former apartment. I looked at it reminiscing the past. It made me smile. That's where he died. I continued walking and passed Kakin's house. I stared into the windows, catching a glimpse of him as he ate with his family. I honestly didn't feel any jealousy or hate for him, I just didn't care, and hopefully I'd never have to attend the same school as him or be anywhere near him again. I hate him. I found myself walking the path that I used to walk down on my usual errands. I was doing it almost subconsciously. I arrived at the shop but didn't really know what to buy, so I just brought a simple kitchen knife in replacement of the beer. As I walked back, blade in hand, I found myself walking through the same familiar park, looking at the same familiar bench, with the same familiar figure. A sudden wave of joy passed through me, along with a long smirk that spread across my face. I approached the figure like an assassin nearing their target and took my place behind him, making up for my short height by propping myself up on a large rock that conveniently sat behind the bench. When he opened his eyes, I could see them full of shock as he saw my face above him. "Kill me." For a while we looked at each other eye to eye before he scoffed and asked, "What are you doing?" He said it in his familiar raspy voice, which, at this point, made me feel a strong sense of calm. "Kill me now." Hearing him speak made the joy that reflected out of my eyes far more intense. I was going mad from excitement. I truly was obsessed. "Please end me." Shigaraki's two beady green eyes staring directly at me. At first I felt shocked, so I asked him, "What are you doing?" After my question, the kid's smile grew, and it was honestly creepy. He then responded to me in a psychotic tone, different from his usual depressed monotone one. "I just wanted to see you again since you're the one my heart craves." He said it in a real straightforward and simple manner that just increased my suspicions. I had no idea what he was on about and looked at him with slight disgust. "Don't look at me like that, all you have to do is fulfill my heart's desire." My suspicions truthfully turned to curiosity. I mean, what would an unkillable kid want from me? My heart's current desire was to find a way to kill the kid, so I decided to listen to him. "And what do you want?" I asked in an uninterested way. "Simple," he said merrily. "I want to die." His words truly did shock me. Why would he come to me about such a thing? Why didn't he just find some method himself? Did he know what my goal was last time we met? I went quiet for a while, and during that time he walked around the bench and sat beside me. He leaned his head against me and relaxed on my shoulder. He left himself so defenseless. Within a few minutes of that, the moon came into view as the clouds traveled east. "Ah, look at the moon. Isn't it beautiful?" The way he talked to me was like an innocent child who hadn't suffered at all, but the look in his desperate eyes spoke differently. When the moon came into view, his features became more obvious. I could see his delicate cheeks overrun with small little freckles. His eyes were wide and full of wonder as he looked at the moon, but were also the eyes of someone that had been through hell and back. He had layers of thick curls which sat at the top of his head, however the rest of his head was covered by the black hood from his deep black hoodie. His smile was one of a future killer. The way the kid was acting now honestly made me laugh, and I let out a slight chuckle. It really was funny how far the kid had fallen. I mean, wow, he had basically became a sociopath. I wouldn't have been surprised if he ended up like me in the future, but I could tell that he still hadn't fully broken and needed a slight nudge. I could easily tell he hadn't killed anyone yet, and I mean, I would gladly like to assist this child in his venture to insanity, but I couldn't deny that I really did want to kill him. "Okay then," I said to the kid. "I'll help you die." He closed his eyes and mouth, tilted his head and gave me an innocent look as he said thank you. His happiness poured out of him and caused me to look away for a moment. He pulled a blade out from his pocket, obviously because he knew nothing of my quirk, and pointed the handle towards me. He took off his hoodie and revealed his somewhat muscular arms and the rest of his bushy hair. It looked quite soft. I reached for the blade, while keeping my pinky off of it in order to not disintegrate it. I grabbed onto the kid's shoulder and straight away plunged it into his heart. He didn't scream, he didn't cry, he didn't even flinch, he just smiled at me and slowly reopened his eyes. Eventually I removed the blade from his chest and we just stared into each other's eyes for a while. After around a minute his face became full of rage as he had his own tantrum when he felt his wound heal. He started screaming like a child, "Why the hell didn't it fucking work? It promised me, it promised me. The voice promised me that it would fill the void within my heart, so why am I still alive? Why do I survive death once more?" It really did make me laugh, never mind me helping the kid break. This kid was already long broken. Hell, I'd say he'd already crossed the brink of insanity. From the sound of it, it seemed as though the kid had an immortality quirk, which is why my quirk didn't work on him. I understand now, all the pieces fit into place. My quirk is just fine, it's you who's the abnormal. I said joyfully as I stood up, raising my two arms in triumph. I had solved my issue, but what was the kid on about? Why was he talking about me being the one to kill him, and that it was said by a voice in his head? I was about to interrogate him, but he quickly reached for the knife, grabbed his hoodie and ran off before I had a chance to say anything. I watched as he left and then made my way back to the bar. I was certain that we would cross paths again. Pav, why didn't it fucking work? I screamed as I ran out of the park. It really did hurt me inside that I was still alive, but it also hurt that he didn't even bother to follow or help me. Instead he just stood there and smiled. I hate life. I yelled and screamed like a spoiled little brat until I no longer had a breath left to give. After a while, I stopped under some bus shelter in order to catch my breath and regain my stamina. "Why?" I whimpered. At that point I fell into a silent sob and crouched down, placing my hands on my knees and burying my head into my thighs. I felt confused, angry, annoyed and sad. I felt like I was in despair. I sat there for a while, left alone with my own miserable thoughts, waiting until I could find the effort to move. At around 8 I picked up the courage to get up and make my way back to the plain and pristine building. I really wanted to just find some ditch and lie there for eternity, but for some unknown reason there was a flicker of hope within me. I didn't know why and I didn't know what I was supposed to do about it, but that unknown and new feeling was what kept me sane. I was certain that it was that meeting with him. Even though I didn't die, my heart felt somewhat significantly less hollow. I hid the evidence of being stabbed by throwing away my shirt and zipping up my hoodie, and then entered the building, where I was greeted by the people there who asked multiple questions about my time out the building. When they finally left me be, I entered my room and fell into a slump on my bed. I took the blade out of my pocket and stared at it, thinking about how he used it. I didn't know how I knew it, but I was certain that we would meet again. I'll be waiting. Pav 1 month later. Okay, so I, at this point, feel like there may have been a few mistranslations on my part. I have done some research, reading manga, and I feel like the voice may have been referring to the person replacing my heart's desire and then fulfilling it, so as to remove my desire to die. In many of the manga I have read, they often associate matters of the heart with romantic feelings for another, so it could be possible that my view of this was all wrong from the get-go. I muttered to myself as I sat on my bed, stroking my chin as I thought about the true context of the voice's words. Before me was a new notebook, different from the one containing my suicide notes. This notebook contained information related to the voice, the red-eyed guy, my heart's desire and the true meaning of it all. The first couple of pages were basically diary entries that I wrote down after the last time I met him, but then I started writing down the voice's words and branched off possible meanings for them and looking for a loophole or if there were any clues on how I could die. At some point I started compiling all the information I had on this strange figure and basically made a character profile for him. Obviously I was missing a hell of a lot of information. There's also like 20 pages where it's just full of drawings of him. At first I just drew him as a silhouette with red eyes, but then I started guessing his appearance from the simple and small details I could remember. I then started thinking about what I truly wanted and made a list of it all. On the surface I just want to die, but if I were to peel off the lid, what would I see inside? Well, inside I would see my trauma, the feeling of no one being there for me, my anxiety, my depression, my helplessness and my misery. From all that I thought about how it could have been prevented, or at least how it might have not affected me as much, and came to the conclusion that the key issue was my crippling loneliness. I'm sure that if I had someone with me I wouldn't have suffered as much. Or if I cared for someone I may have wanted to live for them. So what I truly desired was for someone to care about me and help me through it all. I then focused on matters of the heart, though there was one main problem. I was not mindful of the what people associated with the human heart. After all, I always just thought of it as a vital organ and nothing more. So in my pursuit of more knowledge I consulted those who I thought would be more knowledgeable. I asked some of the people who were around the building, asking literally anybody who passed. Some said that a person's heart would feel warm when you truly cared for another, a small few said a person's heart would react when two people do the deed, and others said the heart gives out a feeling that couldn't be explained. There were also a few people who just ignored me. After finding their words completely pointless and vague, I decided to ignore all their words and consult the Holy Scriptures, my beloved manga. Hence, thanks to them, I came to the word love, which I had to search on Google to figure out what it meant. I then found that all the pieces fit and created a final picture that was the answer to all my hard work and effort. Clearly he is supposed to love me and I him. I yelled like a teenage girl as I flopped backwards on my bed hugging a pillow. As I laughed to myself with excitement, that same old woman from a few months ago entered my room with 3 men who were double her size behind her. "Hello dearie, I hope you're ready because it's time for you to leave this place," she said in a sweet old voice. "We've found a place for you to stay along with a new high school where I'm sure you'll fit right in." After she finished speaking, the men behind her started to collect all the things in my room and pack them away, which was kinda annoying since they were touching all my stuff. The woman led me to a car parked outside and we both got into the back 2 seats. We waited as the men packed my things and brought the bags out one by one. As I sat there I contemplated about what would happen to me. I had come to the conclusion that I would either be sent to some rich private boarding school that they could easily watch me in, a simple high school where I'd be reasonably free and they'd just check on me occasionally, or some sort of facility where they would strap me in and dissect me. If it were the latter, then I'd have to make a break for it. After all, how could I fulfill my heart's desire if I was strapped to some chopping board? I'll kill him. If it were the other options I would comply since they're not too bad. Well, there was a chance that my assumptions were completely wrong and it's none of the above, so I'll have to wait and see. The men finished loading up the car and we began to make our way towards who knows where. There were 3 others in the car excluding me, the old woman, a buff guy, probably in case I go berserk or something, and I drive, who looks somewhat insignificant, clearly just there for no other reason but to drive. After 1 hour of driving we came to an abrupt stop towards the top of some hill that was, once again, surrounded by trees. I was sensing a bunch of red flags. I mean, it's remote, it's surrounded by forest, and I was still being kept in the car as the old woman and the driver got out and talked to someone who was out of view since they were behind the car. The fact that the buff guy was also still in the car with me was even more of a warning, as it shows they believe I was a threat. After at least 10 minutes the driver opened the car door and told me to come out. As I did, the buff guy also got out the car and went to go grab my things out the boot. Now that I was out the car I could see the beautiful city view of the bottom of the hill, though I got bored of it pretty quickly. The old woman waved for me to go round to the back of the car. I do as she insists and then see who they were talking to. It a cute looking little mouse, bear thing. It looked like a school mascot. I knelt down next to the creature and kinda poked its forehead to see how it would react, though it backfired on me quickly as once I felt its soft fur I stared to pat it on the head. Eventually it spoke, saying, "Welcome to my school, I am the principal." It spoke in a joyful high-pitched tone and it was all too much for me. I fell backwards as I slowly began to die from the overwhelming cuteness that radiated off of this undiscovered specimen. When I finally regained my sense of self, I realized his words, stood up and stared behind me in the direction of the school. I stood witness to a giant sign that broadcasted the letters UA all across the area. Behind it was a peculiar H-shaped building that looked tall enough to be a 5-story flat. "My name is Nezu," the little rat said. "And I welcome you to UA as a student of Class 1A. I don't have time for this." Okay, so apologies about this chapter, it's very boring and simple, but I just couldn't bring myself to time skip. For any readers who just can't be bothered, you can skip past this since it's mainly just Izuku getting to look around UA and settle in his room. The main thing that happens is that it just shows that Izuku is undeniably obsessed. For those who do skip it, the important info to give is that the other students will start at school in 1 week and they will be starting off in the dorm rooms straight away. Izuku's paview huh? I said with a neutral face as I stared up to the new school that I was supposed to attend and went deep into thought. It took me a while, but I finally remembered something about this school on TV. "Ah," I said as I whacked one of my hands on the palm of the other. "This is that sports festival school, isn't it?" I said smugly. The driver looked at me awkwardly as if I was a caveman trapped in the modern era. "That's right. The principal, Nezu, said without any judgment. This is the esteemed hero school you know for bringing up some of the best heroes, and you're in hero course, Class 1A. For a short while I looked at the creature with a great deal of judgment as I imagined me as a hero, and damn, it hurt my head. "Apologies, sir. I believe you may be delusional," I said to him calmly so as to not stress the messed up creature. He just stared into my eyes as an open smile sat upon his face. I felt really confused until the old woman said, "Oh, dearie, I was telling you about it on the way here in the car." I just stood there and looked at her with an awkward smile, and silence fell upon us for a while. "I want to go to the park." It took quite a while, but the principal finally broke the ice. "How about we tell you about it again as we give you a tour around the campus?" Since I had no right to refuse, I gave him a small nod while maintaining my awkward smile. They first led me up to the H-shaped building, leaving the buff guy to take my stuff elsewhere. It was kinda weird. I mean, both the people leading me were so small that I had to take really tiny steps in order to stay behind with them. First they led me over to the 1A classroom, lecturing me about how that would be my new classroom along with 19 other students when high school starts. They then took me to the canteen, training grounds, and other key rooms, during which they tell me the general rules at UA that I will have to abide by and how the classes will work. They also take me to the medical room and tell me that if there's anything wrong, physically or mentally, I should go there as that is where the old woman will be. Finally they took me over to a large brick building and tell me that is where I'll be staying for the next 3 years of my life, along with the other students when they get here. They then led me to the top floor of the building and tell me that I'll be the only one up there so that I can have some space. They leave me in front of room 024 and tell me that they'll come back in around 2 hours in order to give me time to set up my room and settle down. I entered the room alone and saw a decently sized space with a tower of boxes in the center. At the very least it was larger than my original bedroom in that apartment. I opened the boxes one by one, first hanging up my clothes in the wardrobe given to me. When I looked at it again, I could really tell how much I liked dark colors and especially the color red. At the very end of the wardrobe I noticed 3 out-of-place sets of clothing. I took them out and realized that they were the school's uniform put there in preparation of my arrival. I opened my next box, this time containing all of my bedding, so I spread them out onto the mattress that was also supplied to me, as well as a metal bed frame that the mattress sat upon. I clearly am obsessed with that mysterious guy because my bed quilt was of a hooded figure with red glowing eyes. When I found this, I was literally cheering for a week about how something like it actually existed. I finished setting up my room by painting my walls black, hanging up all my dark-colored posters and putting a soft rug on the cold wooden floor right in the center. I had finished setting up my room with half an hour to spare, so I decided to venture around the dorm room building, searching around the place. From this small journey I found the location of the washrooms, kitchen, main room, and found that, at the moment, every other room was empty. After a while the principal and old woman came to get me and we ate dinner together with a few other members of staff in the canteen. It felt really awkward to sit with these random people. After all, I was used to eating alone or not eat at all. At least I learned during that time that the other students would be arriving at school in 1 week, so I'll be able to have some peace and quiet for a bit longer. I had decided that every day of the coming week I would go over to the park, sit on the bench and wait. Shigaraki's Pav Kuragiri recently informed me that All Might is becoming a teacher for the brats at UA for a while. At first I was glad that we knew where he would be, but the security of that place is just so annoying. I kept asking Kuragiri if he could create a portal there for us, but he kept complaining about us setting off the alarms. Why do they even try so hard to protect all those snot-nosed kids? They may be the future hero that people will look out for, but they'll never get a taste of reality if they're constantly protected. We'll finally have a use for our little mole. Kuragiri informed me. Mole? I asked suspiciously. Yes, a mole to plant at UA. Do you not remember me telling you about them? I looked at him with confusion. He sighed as he said, they joined us a little while back and have been waiting for an assignment. They have amazing acting skills and can blend in with different crowds of people with ease. He really did sound like a proud parent, but I didn't really give a damn, as long as there was some way for us to enter UA. Sensei also told us that the new Namu is complete and is powerful enough to face All Might head-on. I can't wait to kill him, I said as I chugged down my drink. I once again sat at the bar as Kuragiri stood on the other side. These days have been so boring and repetitive that I started running out of things to do. I complained to Kuragiri. Well, we could always spend some time getting our name out there by targeting other high-rank heroes such as Endeavor. Kuragiri suggested, though I quickly dismissed the idea and waved my hand at him. I'd rather work from the top downwards. He would not change my mind. I'd rather see the people's faces when they see their symbol of peace crushed from defeat. It'll create such utterly amazing chaos. Izuku's Pav. On the first day of my week of freedom I just went to that bench in the park and sat there from 3 till 8, I had a curfew of 9. On the second day of the week I was given all of my textbook and work that I would need for school, then went to go sit on the bench, once again from 3 till 8. On the third day I repeated my exact same actions, and on that day some kid approached me and asked me what I was doing since he saw me there yesterday as well, so I replied, I'm waiting for someone to save me. The kid looked at for a moment and then went running back to his friends. All 3 days the man did not come, and all 3 days I felt disappointed. On the fourth day I was preparing to set off and go to the park until the old woman knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to go see my mum. I obviously said yes because she is the one who literally saved me from that foul-talking pig. We drove down to a high-security prison. The old woman stayed with me for comfort or something like that, I dunno, got scanned for anything suspicious as we entered and was given a full-body search. At that very moment I was so thankful that I left all my blades in my room. When I entered a room with glass in the middle, alone, I saw my mom giving me one of her signature sad smiles, and so I smiled back. Hi sweetheart, are you alright? Have they been treating you well? Are you being fed? I honestly missed this feeling. It was a feeling where I actually wanted to say I love you mom. And mean it. My mom fell into shock. After all, I hadn't properly said that since I was around 3. I'm glad that he's gone. After all, we can both be happy now." As I said that to her, I placed my hand on the glass between us, and she followed. My hands were so small compared to hers, probably due to me being starved so often and being unable to grow properly. After me and my mum had a long and happy conversation about one another, which we hadn't done in years, our time ran out and I had to leave. I promised we would see each other next month, exited the prison and got in the car. After all that, I had a peaceful car ride as I put my headphones on and listened to my music. The rest of the week continued on like before. I just waited and waited and waited. However, on the 5th day the kid from before asked if I wanted to play with him and his friends, so I joined them in a game of catch for the majority of the time. He likely assumed I was around 12 because of my height. The 6th day replicated the 5th, but something annoying happened on my last peaceful day. Some of the other students had already began moving their stuff into their dorm rooms and started preparing them for the next day. Due to my anti-socialness, I just hauled up in my room waiting until they left, since they couldn't actually stay here till tomorrow. After they left, I went over to the washrooms and sat in the bathtub for a while as I thought of how to avoid people the most. The best conclusion I found was to act unapproachable. So I should just be myself. The next day I changed into my uniform but found that the blazer was too annoying and uncomfortable, so I just replaced it with an oversized hoodie. I made my way over to the H-shaped building and looked for Class 1A. Since my memory was amazing, I first found myself at the granny's clinic, then the cafeteria, until I finally found myself in front of a giant door with the symbols one on top of each other. When I opened the door, I saw no one. It was because of my superb listening skills and my close proximity to the building that I arrived 1 hour early. Since there was no point in leaving because I'd likely never come back, I looked for my seat on the chart on the board and sat one seat forward from the back left corner. I fell into a slump on the desk, used my hood to cover my face and drifted into a quiet slumber. It is pov. When I arrived at the classroom half an hour early, I noticed a student with their head on their desk in the back corner of the room. I informed him of how students should be respectful to the desks that our former seniors learned on, but he completely ignored me. I motioned my hands to indicate that he should not be doing such things, but his hood obscured his view. Eventually, a cold-looking student with 2 different hair colors, half red, half white, entered the classroom and sat towards the back on the right-hand side of the room. I greeted him, but he looked the other way and stared at the wall for a while. One at a time, my new classmates started to enter the room and I greeted them all. Some greeted me back, some acted coldly, some shy, some acted excessively friendly, and this one classmate ignored my words, gave a perverse smile and approached a pink girl. She quickly kicked him in the face before anything happened and he fell to the ground, so any issues were resolved. With around 3 minutes until the bell rang, an aggressive hot-headed classmate entered yelling, "Don't any of you extras get in my way, you hear me?" He shouted it out like some common back alley thug as he made his way over to his seat in front of the sleeping student with one of the most peculiar walks I had ever seen. He sat down on his chair, leaned back onto the sleeping classmate's desk and put his feet up on his own. I repeated what I said to the other student, but this time with more passion and emphasis on why he should stop doing that, but he just yelled back in response. I then heard my classmates react to something outside of the door, talking about how there was some sort of grub worm on the floor. I went to check and saw a tired man's face sticked out of a yellow sleeping bag. He slowly unzipped it, climbed out, grabbed it in his arms and slouched as he crept towards the teacher's desk. He stood behind the desk and said, "I am your homeroom teacher." He barely gave us any time to process those words before he commanded us to get into our training suits and join him on the training ground. We started to collect our clothes and headed to the changing rooms. As I left through the door, I saw our homeroom teacher, Mr. Aizawa, walk up to the sleeping student's desk. Eyes Yukuspov. Next thing I know, someone is banging on my desk, which suddenly shocked me awake and my head shot up. My breathing became heavy as I said, "Thank you. You saved me. I was having a horrible dream." Kacchan was there and I looked up and saw some sleepy guy who looked super pissed. I looked around me and saw that all the other students' desks were empty but had bags hung up at the side of them. Did I miss something? I asked as I pointed to the desk closest to me. He looked into my eyes, shooting lasers at me for a full minute before saying, "Grab your training gear and head on over to the training ground." I walked towards the box numbered 4 and took it out, since it was the only one still there. I left the room and as I did the teacher took a deep and weary sigh. I realized, by time I got around a corner, that I had no clue where I was going to, so I rushed back to the teacher and asked. "2 rights then the door to your left," he said with an immensely frustrated tone. I followed his words and found an already empty locker room. I looked for an empty locker, changed out of my uniform and put on the blue, almost skin-tight clothes and shoved my uniform into the locker. I walked out the door and made my way to the training grounds, unprepared for what awaited me, though I firstly needed to find where I was supposed to go before I could even do anything else. Well, this was very eventful. When I, finally, made it to the training ground, the teacher decided that we would do a Quirk assessment test and that the lowest scoring student would have to leave school, which meant that my results would literally be no different from when I was a child doing it Quirkless. At the very least, if some random flying object hit me, I wouldn't die. Throughout most of the time I just started at the floor until someone yelled "die!" in a very Kacchan-like voice. I looked up to see none other than Kacchan himself, and it was really a sight for sore eyes how he managed to become a hero. When he turned around to face towards the teacher, our eyes met, his full of hate and mine full of boredom. The sleepy teacher, I'll call him Sleepy Sensei for now on, then told us to get in 2 lines and run 15 meters one after another. I had to race next to Kacchan, so my arm got a bit burned. So then one physical trial after another we were tested, and me, who was unable to strengthen myself all that much and focused more on technique, did a terrible job at everything. When the results were shown, I happened to be at the bottom, which I was good with. To say goodbye to all my classmates, that I never actually spoke to, I walked around shaking everyone's hand. Kacchan was the exception, of course. I started to walk off to go pack my things, but I suddenly got held back by some weird material. It was the teacher using his scarf to prevent from me walking off, and as he used it, his eyes shone a deep red and his hair floated upwards. It truthfully looked kinda cool. "Were you even trying?" he asked me. He was pissed for sure. Well, my Quirk isn't really the type to be useful in these kinda thing, so when I said that I could hear Kacchan scoff at me in the background. "Then find a way to make your Quirk useful, and by the way, you're not being sent home, so get back to the classroom." As I wandered off to the changing rooms, I said the best way to do that is to chop off my fingers. Under my breath. That evening was truly a nightmare. It felt like I was in nursery. It was so chaotic that I couldn't even put in the effort to leave my room. All I could do was thank the principal and Granny in my head for letting me have the entire top floor to myself, although there were cases where people went exploring onto my floor, which was a real pain in the ass. I didn't leave my room until around 1 a.m. so that I could get food, but even then there was some two-faced guy sat down in the kitchen eating soba, but he wasn't too big a problem. The night was even more painful since I could occasionally hear Kacchan, who appears to be on the floor below me, yelling about something. At some point I heard the word Deku but couldn't hear the rest. Next up we had the old guy making us do some sort of battle in a building, but before that we were given our hero costumes, though I just asked for a black hoodie and simple black slacks since I couldn't care less. I also asked for blades that are able to stick out my shoes, but it seems they did not give me any. When we started the battle I literally just walked off aimlessly and then got bombarded with explosions from Kacchan. I did honestly feel bad for Lil Kirby because she just so happened to be placed on a team with someone like me. With the effort I put into that we obviously lost, but it didn't even matter to me. After our battle we went into a room with multiple screens and waited for the other battles to play out. The next 2 weeks continued on like this until it was announced to us that we would be heading to somewhere called the Used, and we went on a mini field trip there. It was a long and boring bus ride with everyone talking to each other while I just sat there with my wireless headphones in with my long curly hair covering my ears. I think at some point Lil Kirby spoke to me, but I wasn't sure, so I just ignored her. We finally arrived at a large dome-shaped building and walked in to find someone in an astronaut's suit. I heard Lil Kirby talking about the number 13 but zoned out and looked around the inside of the Used. There were 2 large domes towards the back, a water area with a boat in it, a mountainous space, and some more that I couldn't quite see. Towards the center, down a long set of stairs, there was an open space and a large fountain. I focused on the spot in front of the fountain for a while, suspecting that my vision was dying since it looked wavy and blurry, but then I saw it. A large black and purple portal appeared, and out from that portal came a bunch of weird, creepy-looking people. After a large amount of what people called villains came out of the portal, sounds like some sort of anime or manga, a man with baby blue hair and hands all over him appeared along with some bird-like beast. I heard a voice coming from the portal along 2 eyes, though didn't exactly hear its words, but the moment the handyman spoke I didn't know how to react. "Where is he?" he said. I went through the trouble of bringing so many friends who are so eager to meet him. As he spoke those few words, a large and hideous smile sprung across my face. I knew from that uniquely raspy voice that it was him. It was definitely him, the one who would fulfill my heart's desire. I felt truly ecstatic. He shall be mine and only mine. Izuku's there's no one else who could have a voice as beautiful as that, but he sounded happier than before, like he was waiting for that moment up until now. He likely had a different reason to be waiting, but I was also waiting for a moment like that, where we would meet again. The moment that I could see and be with him again. The moment I could take him for myself. I started to let out a sudden chuckle that alarmed those around me. Some thought I was hysterical, some thought I was going into a nervous panic, but in truth I was purely excited and full of joy, and maybe a hint hysterical. Tears of joy flowed out of my eyes as I started to follow Sleepy Sensei down to where he was, but was stopped in my tracks when the mist guy appeared in front of me. I let out a low growl like a dog ready to attack, but did not have the chance to as Kaken and a redhead jumped at him ahead of me. At that moment the mist guy surrounded a few of us students and then it went black. Next thing I knew I was on a boat in the middle of a large lake, but did not leave the Used. A couple 100 meters away I could see the same large fountain that he should have been at. Without even second-guessing myself I stood on the side of the boat ready to dive, but was quickly grabbed by the waist and dragged back into the boat. A frog girl appeared in front of my face as I laid on the wooden floor due to being thrown down. "What are you trying to do?" she asked, finishing with a small croak. "Didn't you notice that the water is full of villains?" I looked at her for a moment and then looked straight up at the glass dome ceiling and was able to see the clear blue sky. As heavy raindrops poured out of my eyes, the frog gave me a worried look as she asked, "Are you alright?" I then replied with a weak tone and a large sob, "I just want to leave this dumbass boat and see him." At the end of that I gave her a long chaotic smile and 2 wide and desperate teary eyes. "Is that so wrong?" She gave a slight shudder because of my twisted face and then answered me. "There's nothing wrong with that. After all, I'm sure all 3 of us want to get off this boat and check the others are safe." I raised my head and sat myself up against the boat. After doing so I saw a small pipsqueak cowering behind her. I should kill them and find him. For the first time in forever I could actually hear the voice. "Just shut up for now," I yelled at it, and the other 2 almost looked fearful from me suddenly snapping. "I need him. I know that, but give me a break." I started to become more aggressive as I clasped onto my ears and closed my eyes. "Please just find him. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I don't need you, just piss off." I started basically screaming at myself in the corner. The other 2 in the boat with me began backing away to the other side and the villains stared into the boat, pretty much curious about what was happening. "Why won't you just listen? It's not right. It's not, it's not, it's not. I shouldn't have a voice in my head now, get out. I yelled, I screamed, I cried out, I basically threw a tantrum that could be heard all throughout the usage. When have we been ones to follow others? Don't let that counseling get to you, just go save him. I just want my sanity back. It's your fault I'm like this. It's your fault I'm broken. I began to run short of breath and was thrown into a coughing fit. Midoriya. The frog girl said as she reached out towards me. Don't. I yelled as I smacked her hand away from me and forced her back, due to her uncomfort. Is it really my fault? Yes, it's your fault. If you hadn't spoken to me, if you had just stayed quiet, then. I started to trail off from my words. Then what? I thought about what I would have been without the voice, but the truth was, what would I have been? I didn't know. Would you have been happy, free, full of joy and wonder? Would you be loved? And no. I suppressed my rage and spoke like a child being disciplined. Or would you still be trying to die as best you could? I still want to die. I told it sternly and coldly. And how do you want to die? By his hands. And who told you about him? You did. Wait, no, I did. And what am I? You are just my subconscious, and I'm angry at you because I hate myself. And what will we do with this hate? We will direct it at ourselves and this rotten society. And what will we do now? We will claim what is ours. I finally had the resolve to decide on what I was doing, and after a while of talking back and forth with myself, I came to the conclusion that I would not let anyone else touch what was mine. I stood up and climbed onto the edge of the boat, just as I had done before, but this time I took off the blade that was strapped to the back of my leg, clutched in my hand, and dove straight into the water. Determination gleamed in my eyes as I slowly slit the throat of the first villian that came to pass. From the pool of blood that flowed up, the other villains were hesitant to move, allowing me the perfect opportunity to swim directly towards the fountain. To avoid being caught or followed, I did not go up for air once within the 4 minutes I was down there, but thanks to my quirk I managed it somehow. When I was within 5 meters of the edge of the water, I felt my leg being pulled from something down below. I checked to see what it was and saw it was some creepy shark creature chewing on my leg. The moment I saw that, I, without hesitation, used the blade to slowly cut my leg off, almost getting it caught on the bone, but still managed to saw through it. To a normal person that pain would have been excruciating, however I was too high off of the adrenaline to even realize what I was actually doing. Once my leg was fully off, I let the shark have his snack and swam up to shore. I dragged myself across the tiles on the side as my leg left behind a violet trail of blood. The injury on my leg was too inconvenient and too much of a bother for me to handle, so I used my trump card that I had never bothered to use before. I accelerated the healing process. From my ability, I was able to heal my injury in under 2 seconds, but at the cost of 1/4 of my energy. Once I was able to run normally again, and I rushed over to the fountain in the center, 2 fresh blades in hand, since I didn't want to give him blood poisoning or anything of the sort. I finally found myself in front of the fountain. In my view was an unconscious, bloodied-up sleepy sensei with him next to teacher. I literally skipped over to him joyfully, both arms stretches in front of me, both blades still in hand, and an enchanted smile on my face as I said, "Hi there, do you remember me?" As I said those words, I saw him stumble ever so slightly, but held himself back from reacting. He was still unharmed and still well. Good, now we can be the only one to touch him. He is ours and only ours. That will be the end of the video. See you never, haha.